Hello, everyone. I'm Brandon K. Hedgepeth, and I want to welcome you all here to the Tansson Talk Show. I'm so excited to be here with you all today as we continue on our mission to bring people together. And so, let me go ahead and take a moment to introduce today's guest, Alexis Revis Yeoman. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm so glad to have you. And like I was just saying moments ago, I'm just so excited to speak with you and really get to know you better. And so, how have you been thus far today?
So far, so good. I'm having a great day today.
That is great to hear. And so, before we get started, are you able to take a moment to go ahead and introduce yourself for our watching or listening audience here today?
Yeah. Well, you said my name, Alexis Revis Yeoman. I have about 35 years in the communications industry. I started as a television producer in the Washington, D.C. market, and then branched out to do syndicated shows from New York and regional shows in Ohio. And then I kind of switched over to marketing and public relations and started doing that and have been doing that for the last, I guess, about 20 years or so.
Well, I'm so excited to hear about your expansive experience and really like how everything came to be. And so, had you always wanted to to get into television when you had initially started?
Yes, I decided when I was 16 that I wanted to be a television producer. And I was fortunate enough to be able to join a class in my senior year of high school when I turned 17. DC Public Schools offered a journalism class for only high school seniors, and I was accepted into the program. And as a result of working in that program, I took broadcast journalism. There were three tracks. You could take reporting, photography, and broadcast journalism. So I chose broadcast journalism. And fortunate for me, my teacher was a former cameraman at the ABC affiliate in Washington, D.C. And so when we graduated, he was able to get me an interview with their personnel director. And shortly after I graduated, she hired me to work at Channel 7, and that's how I got started.
That is really cool that you were able to have that connection there and learn from the instructor's experience. And so, being within that class, initially for broadcast journalism, was it sort of like what you expected, or was there anything that really, I guess, surprised you a bit when going through it?
I didn't know what to expect when I decided I wanted to be a television producer. It was purely based on a television show that I saw on TV. At the time, it was called the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and she was a television producer for the news. And even though on that sitcom they didn't produce one thing, but for whatever reason, it kind of struck me, and I just thought that's what I wanted to do. And so I learned a lot in that senior class, in that journalism class that we took. And at the time, the equipment was too heavy for a female to carry. Now you could do it on your camera almost, but back then it literally was 15, 16 pounds. That was just a recording box. And then you had the camera. So clearly, I was not going to videotape or be a videographer or anything of that nature. But I did learn a lot about how to put a story together and what to do, what not to do, how to approach people, how to interview them, how to get people to let you interview them. We had multiple press conferences from high level people all throughout DC that came in and allowed us to do, press interviews with them, so to speak. So we did quite a bit, and I learned a lot. And when I went to Channel Seven, I was not. I wasn't prepared for the job because I had never worked at a television station before, but I at least had an idea of what it was they did, and I still wanted to do it. So so I pursued that, and I did. I enjoyed it. By my junior year of college, I was producing my own television show at Channel Seven.
Well, that is so cool that you were able to do that, and I mean, inspired by the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And so, fun fact actually about that is I actually watched the first season of it last year,
Uh-huh.
and in part because I really wanted to learn more about it because of I guess the way that I had read that like it just really helped inspire people and uplift people, and so I really wanted to watch it for myself to get into that field. And so I was actually just had put it on my plans like about like yesterday or so to get back into watching season two. So that's really interesting to hear that. I mean, that's really what helped inspire you to go for this goal and aspiration.
Yeah, it really did. It really did. So I worked at Channel 7 for 3 years, and then I went to the NBC affiliate in Washington for my last year of college. So I was fortunate enough to have 4 years of television experience by the time I graduated undergrad. And so I was so far ahead of my peers because I had 4 years of production experience, and I had my degree in journalism. So you couldn't tell me anything. I was ready to go.
Well, that is so great that you were able to to do that. And so, like, how did your classmates and I suppose college instructors, I guess, react to realizing that you were already in the industry and doing things, being very active in it, at such an early age?
They were very supportive, particularly my instructors. They were very supportive, and they did want to make sure that I learned other areas of production, not just what I was doing at Channel Seven, but they wanted to make sure that I broadened my horizon and didn't get pigeonholed into just kind of one area of production, which I appreciated because I was paying to go to school to learn. So that was helpful.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely great. I mean, and that's one of the things too is that when like I guess sometimes when you try to learn about something that you're already in and actively doing, sometimes it's a little hard to sort of like acknowledge that we still need help too. And so I'm glad that at least you were able to make the most of your education, still continue to learn even despite being in the industry.
Right. Yep, I did. And I had a lot of good people around me at Channel 7, a lot of mentors, a lot of people who saw if you were willing to work hard, they were willing to help you. And so when I left Channel 7, I have lifelong friends that I still am in communications with, that I met there, and we never lost touch. And we always have been supportive of each other's careers, and if we needed career advice, we could talk to each other because we were all pretty much in the same field, even though different people went, different ways and pursued different avenues, but we always stayed in touch and always helped each other. And that's important to have in your life when you're traveling along these roads.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to make these connections and that was able to make an impact on you. And so, out of curiosity, what led you to switch from the ABC affiliate to the NBC one?
Just opportunity. I was producing my own show at Channel 7, and we had won one Emmy under that when I was over there. And then I had an opportunity. NBC is in DC. NBC owns four stations. And so the NBC station in DC is owned and operated by NBC. It's not an affiliate like the Channel 7 was the ABC affiliate, but NBC owned it. So it was then now I'm moving to the network. And so that had a little bit more prestige, when you are trying to build your career, looks better on your resume, so to speak. Um, but I did take um, a position as an associate producer. So that's kind of like going backwards. But I saw that as really moving into a larger organization. And I'm really glad I did, because the woman who was the producer is, again, she's been my friend for 40 years. We still keep in touch, and we still go out and do things together. And so there was an opportunity to produce a children's show, and I went over there to work with her to produce a children's show, and we won an Emmy for that one. Mhm.
That is so great that you were able to to do that. And how long did you stay at your NBC owned and operated station?
I was there for 2.5 years, and then I went to the PBS station. There was a new PBS station starting up at Howard University. They were given a license to own and operate their own public television station. And so they were literally cherry picking individuals, from the different stations in DC, from channels, the CBS affiliate, the ABC affiliate, the NBC owned and operated station. They were taking people from all of those stations to build their staff to run the public television station at Howard. And I felt like that was a wonderful opportunity to get on the ground level of a brand new station coming up. And I produced a 1 hour live um, television show, public affairs show, every night from 7 to 8, with the studio live in the studio, and we took telephone calls, because it was live, and the whole host of it was public affairs, so we did all kinds of issues.
Wow, that is really great though that you were able to then be selected as one of the people for the new station. And so, I mean, since this was an opportunity that just sort of came to you, how did it feel like being one of the people selected, especially, I mean, this early into your career?
Well, I guess I just liked what I was doing so much. I didn't feel special in any way. I just felt like this is great. Let's roll up our sleeves and get this done. And we did. We had a good group of people there. We all kind of gelled together. And again, some of those people I still keep in touch with. We had a really great time um, at the station, and I guess I left after it had been on the air for about 3 or 4 years.
Wow, that is really great though that, I mean, in such a short time that you had been at ABC affiliate to NBC owned and operated a brand new CBS station. And so were you for the PBS station, were you also a producer or associate producer or
I was a producer. I produced a
producer?
nightly television show every night live, and that for someone in their early to mid 20s, it was a lot of pressure. Because if you know anything about guest canceling at the last minute, and things, your host is stuck on 295 and can't, get there in time. There's a whole lot of things that can go wrong. And when you have a live show, you really have to pivot quickly and figure out what you're going to do. So it's not like it's taped, you don't have those luxuries. So it was, but when you're young like that, it's, you enjoy the challenge and you enjoy the energy that it brings.
Yeah, I mean that is just so interesting. And and while not on on that scale, like from some of the different experiences that I've been a part of, it makes you really like understand and appreciate like everything that that you had done during that time. And so, what ultimately, I guess, did you go to after leaving the PBS station?
Once I left there, I moved on to a cable franchise that actually was owned by American Express and Warner Communications. And they created a cable franchise that they actually started up in different parts of the country. So the headquarters was in Columbus, Ohio, and that's where we produced all the live programming. Everything we produced was live. And then they had cable franchises in Cincinnati, in Kentucky, and in Denver, and in Pittsburgh. They had about 8 different franchises around the country. So that gave me an opportunity to move out of local television, so to speak, and then move into regional programming. And so I did a live show um, for the cable franchise out there, and again, it was very it was a challenge because it was live, and it had another element to it because it was live, and because it was a cable franchise. The remote that you got with your cable box enabled you to watch local enabled you to watch the regional programming that we produced and actually give real time feedback. So you might think this is funny, but at the time it was the number one show. I produced a 1 hour television show called Soap Scoop. And it was the first half hour of the show was our host would give a recap of what happened on all the soap operas that day. And then at the halfway point, we would interview some of the soap stars. And we would fly them into Columbus from New York, and they would be on the show, and we would interview them. And I don't know, it was the number one show. And because you could do interactive television at the time, we could ask our audience, our viewing audience, what they wanted to see happen with these characters on the soap operas. And the writers in New York would be just over the moon because they could get real time feedback on their shows. So that was we give them the results, they send us the soap stars. So that's kind of how that worked, and it worked out.
Wow, that seems so cool, though. For the time being at the cutting edge of technology and being within a new medium for cable television. How was, I guess, the pivot for you going from local broadcast over to cable, and especially within a new location?
Well, it was the first time I moved away from home, so I was homesick. I can tell you that. But it wasn't any different from just producing a show. The audience is different, of course, and but what we did was an entertainment show, and soap operas were very highly rated programs. So across the board, a lot of people would be interested in what we were doing. And if you worked all day and you got home at 5 o'clock, and that's what time we aired, you could find out what happened on your soaps that day without, because back then they didn't have DVRs and all the things that we have now. So that was one of the reasons why the show was so popular, because you got a chance to hear what was going on that day on your soap operas.
That is so cool, though. Yeah. As someone who is like a self-described research enthusiast, I'm just so like intrigued I mean, by all of this. And so, and you mentioned that the system was a part of a partnership, I believe, between Viacom and American Express.
American Express and Warner
Warner.
Communications.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. And so yeah, so was this a part of I'm trying to think, uh Cube, or is that was
Yep, it was
yeah.
the Cube Network. You heard of that?
Yeah. Yeah, I like I said, I really like am really into research and especially for television and broadcasting. So I mean, wow.
That's what it was. It was the Cube Network. Hmm.
Wow. And so I guess for you, like being able to do this, I think what was one of the new experiences that you had from this that you were able to really take away? Because I know you mentioned, of course, being able to have the live results and being able to see how people want to interact with the show. But was there anything else that you really learned from this that you hadn't gotten in your previous experiences?
Yeah, actually, because in the previous shows that I had produced, the staff was really small. Um, it was typically three, no more than four of us. When I got to Columbus to produce the shows for the Cube Network, I inherited a staff of six, and I was 24. So I got a chance to be a supervisor, and that was something that I hadn't done before, not at that level anyway, and that many people. So that was a good opportunity for me to hone my managerial skills.
And so being able to, I mean, to have those skills, I mean, was that able to help you overall in the long run for your career?
Oh, absolutely. Because when I left Cube, I took a job in New York for Essence Magazine. They decided to do their own television show, and they hired me to produce their first nationally syndicated show. And that's why I went, because it gave me an opportunity to produce shows on a national level. We were in 200 markets across the country, and I inherited a staff of nine people. So by that time I was 26. So that prepared me, that was it was a good preparation for me to try to, move into my next position with some managerial skills, because I really needed them. There, nine people for me at the time was a lot. And being in a new city like New York City, and having all these new folks have to report to me, it was a lot. So I appreciated the time that I spent in Columbus. Hmm.
Well, that's great that you were able, I mean, to make the most of all of these great opportunities. And so like when you moved out to New York City for the Essence Magazine show, was that a opportunity that came to you, or did you go looking for just new opportunities in general?
It actually came to me because I am a native Washingtonian. I'm not a New Yorker. And there's a huge difference. So with New York, you either love it and you love the energy and you love the grit and grime and everything that comes with it, or you absolutely hate it. So I was on the latter. I wasn't enthralled with New York. I had been there several times in my lifetime, and I was always grateful to get back on the train, the plane, the car, whatever, to bring me back home. Um, but now I was going to live there, and I was not fond of that experience. So I signed this 13 show contract to produce the show for 13 shows. And then after that, I resigned because I did not like living in New York. The money I paid for my apartment, I could buy a house in DC, So I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So I called my parents and said, I don't know what you have in my bedroom, but take it out because I'm coming back home.
Wow, that is so interesting. But I mean, but at the same time, though, I mean, if you don't enjoy it, I mean, yeah, and you don't, yeah, and you don't like the area that you reside. I mean, at least by going home, that you at least know, yeah, you know where you stand. You know sort of where everything is, even if it had been a little bit since you've been there.
I was much happier when I came home. And then I had to look for a job all over again. So that was the first job I ever quit and did not have one to come to. All the rest of them, it's always easier to get a job when you have a job. But I quit that one and came home and started looking for work. And I found work. I went back to Channel 7. All my friends were there and did some freelance work for them until I got on my feet and I took a job with a television production company that had a contract with AARP. And we produced a show called Modern Maturity. It was a nationally syndicated show. It aired in 300 markets, and it was all PBS though. And I produced two segments on that show, and I worked there until I decided that I had had enough of television, and that's when I made my switch to public relations.
Was that an easy switch for you to go from one medium to, yeah, I mean, to a completely different field, related but different?
Right, that's the thing. It's related but different. So, yes, it wasn't difficult only because you still have when you're working on local television in particular, you write all your own shows. And so my writing skills were very high and um in public relations, you do a lot of writing press releases and brochures and all different kinds of print materials that to get the message out. And because I worked in um, in a quasi government agency, I worked for the state's attorney in Prince George's County as the director of communications. So it was important for me to he was an elected official, to let the residents know, what kind of job he was doing and what he was, capable of and what his achievements were. And so that's that's what I did. And that's not that far off, from what you have to do as a writer for television.
At least you were able to take the skills that you had already had and developed and just use it in a different way.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I think that what I did was when I was in college, my when I started out going into broadcast television. That was my major. But once I started producing my own show and I really was passing those classes with A's because I was doing what they were, I switched my major and I concentrated on print journalism. So that forced me to have to write more because in print journalism, you write more expansively, where in broadcast, you're writing in sound bites. So that improved my writing ability long form. And I think that also helped when I made the switch.
Well, at least that was able to, I mean, to help you out full circle in that regard.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, you never really know when you're learning something, when something might come to use, much later.
Right. That's exactly right. So I was fortunate to be of the presence of mind to say, I'm paying this money. I don't want to get straight A's in school because I know everything, even though my grade point average would be great, but I needed to learn a little bit more than what I was learning. So, and print journalism was hard. It was not easy. So, so I did learn a lot there, and I appreciated, having done that.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to utilize that. And so, how long overall did you stay in the quasi government, sector, doing public relations?
I stayed with the state's attorney's office as its director of communications for 6 years, and then I left. I left. I left there because the state's attorney was elevated to the federal bench by President Clinton. And so I too went to the White House to work at the National Drug Control Policy Office. If you've heard of in the news, people speak of the drug czar. I was the deputy director for public affairs, and I worked for the drug czar, basically.
So, how was it for you? Yeah, at that point, I mean, having been working for the White House and and being able to, I mean, to do that and still at a rather early age too.
Yeah, I was probably in my early 30s when I took that job, and it was it was the White House is something like most people have never seen. So I can't even describe to you. Hardly, it's not anything that you have experienced. No job is like that. So because of the nature of the job that we were doing, drug policy takes place in the United States from a domestic level, but it also takes place outside of the United States in an international level. So we worked a lot with the FBI and the ATF and the FBI, let's say FBI, ATF, CIA, all of those entities overseas. But then on the state side, we had a lot of what they call demand reduction agencies and organizations trying to convince people that they don't need drugs to live, and especially recreational use, and and to try to combat, you know, drug use. So it just never stopped, because when you go home to go to sleep, all these countries overseas are doing their thing. When you come to work, all of that's on your desk, plus the the domestic side is coming in during the day. So it just never stops. And the drug czar told me one day, he said, you do 2 years of this and then you quit, because nobody can sustain this kind of this level of effort day in and day out. You need to do it, get it on your resume, and hit the door. And that's what he did. He stayed there for 2 years. And when he left, I said, "Oh, you leaving me?" He said, "I told you 2 years." So I left after about 2 years and 2 months. Yeah.
Well, nevertheless, I mean, that certainly is something to, I mean, to put on your resume. But I mean, I could only I mean, imagine like how much that is, especially like you said. I mean, because you have just all those relations, with so many, different countries, and then the U.S. itself is just so wide and expansive with so many responsibilities. I mean,
Yeah. It was
yeah.
a lot. It was a lot for a 30 some odd young girl to be sitting in there just every day, just every day. So I enjoyed it because I learned a lot. I did. Like I said, there's no other experience like working in the White House. So I did enjoy it, but it was a lot.
Well, I'm glad that, I mean, that you were able to have that opportunity. And so, after your 2 years and 2 months, where did you, I guess, end up pivoting to next? I mean, like what type of opportunity were you interested in? Did you want to continue that type of work, or were you sort of, you want a bit of a break from like hard, strenuous work after? Yeah, I could only imagine like the stress toll that would take on you for doing
Yeah.
that.
It took that stress, it took a toll on everyone. But at when I was at the White House, when I took the job, I had an 8-month-old son. And then at the end of 2 years, I gave birth to my second child, my daughter. And then I had a 2.5-year-old and I had an infant. And when you get to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they were calling staff meetings at 7 p.m., okay, and you had to be there as the communications person, you got to know what's going on, so you got to be there. So that my personal life was not conducive to the hours and the stress level that job had along with it. So my husband and I decided I would go into business for myself, and in that way I could manage my time a little bit more between my children and my work. And I would just take on clients that would allow me to have the flexibility that I needed as a new mom, and just kind of be there for my kids, because my husband did, we used to say, the yeoman share of the work when I was at the White House, because I just wasn't there. Between he and my mother, they did everything. I'd get home and the kids would be in the bed. Um, so I started my own company, and for the first year and the second year of business, I met my business partner, and she and I decided to go into business together, and we ran our own public relations and marketing firm for 15 years. Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, like I like what you said about, I mean, the toll that like working at the White House, and even like for some of the other stuff that you're doing, like that it took away from like your family and your personal life. And I like that for you being able to have your own company, and then with your business partner, like you're able to get some of that back. And was it an adjustment period to try to, I guess, get back into that because you just been away for so long, and being able to have these opportunities regularly?
Well, I'll tell you what was most thing that was most stark was when you're at the White House and you call somebody, and the secretary say, "Well, who may I say is calling?" And you say, "It's Alexis Revis Yeoman from the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy." Whoever you're calling, they pick up the phone, right? So when I was in business for myself, and I would say, "Alexis Yeoman," the CAMA Group, that was the name of our company, and they'll have to get back to you. So it was between the White House and the state's attorney's office. That's the other thing. When someone says, "I'm calling from the state's attorney's office," they pick up the phone because they want to know what's going on. Now, I'm not calling because they're in trouble. I'm calling because I'm doing, public relations or what have you. But it took some time to get used to people not taking your call or not calling you back, or you have to call them 2 or 3 times in order to get an answer from people. But that was a little humbling, but otherwise, it was a pretty smooth transition. But when you're in business for yourself, you've got to get out there and hustle up clients, and that was something that I had not done, because I always worked for an organization. So, trying to find clients, pitching your company, writing proposals for, they call them RFPs, which is a request for a proposal. And you write a bid for that proposal, submit it, try to get it, them get it, try the next one. I mean, it's a never ending thing. And when you get the work, then you got to do the work, and you still have to look for more work, because so a lot of people think being in business for themselves is an easy thing, and that you don't have a boss, but your clients are your boss, number one. And two, if you don't have the discipline to do the work and get it and bring it in simultaneously, which is hard and a lot, you won't stay in business very long. So, but we were able to eke out a good 15 years before we closed our doors. Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, how did the decision come to eventually like close doors and I suppose do something else?
Well, unfortunately, the bottom fell out of the economy. If you remember back in 2008, the market dropped, the housing market dropped, the economy dropped, and unfortunately, for those of us in the marketing, advertising, public relations, field, when that happened, a lot of businesses went out of business. And we had two major clients, multi-million dollar contracts, and both of them went out of business. And we had about, I'd say, 12 these little small contracts, $50,000 here, $25,000. And we did those kind of contracts for people who really didn't have those big dollar budgets, but they were trying to get some things done. We would help people out. You can't make it off of those little, stringing them all together. And at the time, we had 12 people on our staff. So we just told them, start looking for a new job so we don't have to fire you, which they all did. And we knew that they were all good people. So we knew they would get picked up. And eventually, I left first, and then my partner closed it down. We both got jobs. So, and that's what I do now. I'm the director of communications for the Prince George's County Department of Housing and Community Development. And she took a job, administrative job, with one of our clients actually. So she's been there ever since, and so have I.
Well, at least that like that you all were able to at least gracefully let everyone on your staff at least try to find a new job before
Yeah.
ultimately having to shut down. It's very unfortunate that it had to necessarily come to that, but
Mm-hmm.
at least it seems like, at least as of right now, that things have at least worked themselves out
Oh
in
yeah.
that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We were able to stay in business long enough so that everybody could kind of, I don't want to say take their time, but within a year's time, they all were able to find other employment so that we didn't have to lay anybody off or fire anybody or do anything like that.
Well, I'm glad that at least that was able to happen. And so for you transitioning into your current job now, how was overall that transition going from being your own boss, having to have that own discipline, to once again, I guess, being having to report to other people, report to the public, and like in that type of setting.
And work for somebody. And that's funny you should ask that because the director of the agency took me to lunch before he hired me and asked me that same question. He said, okay, you've been in charge for 15 years. Now you're going to have to report to me. How do you feel about that? I said, does the check clear? Great. I can report to you. So he thought it was, he got a laugh out of that. I said, no, but I'm here to do a job. You would be a client to me just like anybody else, and my job here is to make you look good because that's what public relations does. And when I make you look good, then you make the county executive look good and everybody's happy. And he and I are very close. He sends me Happy Friday text messages someday. We haven't worked together now since I guess it was 2018, and it's when he left. and but we still talk. We're still good friends. And I worked for him for 8 years. Hmm.
Wow. Well, overall, I mean, at least that with that, you're able to, I mean, yeah, to still sort of do what you do and enjoy, but you're able to still like pull from all of these different experiences that you've had, and
Hmm.
so I guess overall, like I guess overall right now, so which experiences I guess would you say that you pull from more and what you do in the present day?
Um, when people are not, when I don't have to produce television. Sorry for the doorbell. When I don't have to produce television, that's one thing. Um, but typically, um, I would say the time I spent as an entrepreneur, um, and owning my own company, because we had corporate clients, we had government clients, we had nonprofit clients, and we all had to pivot on. Everybody needed something different, but at the same time, there are only so many different vehicles you can use to get people's message out. So as long as you have to be a quick study, and you have to understand what their field is, and then how to best promote them within their industry. And we had to do that time and time again. So I learned a lot, from all of our different clients that we had over all of that period of time. And you can your approach is a little bit different, but it's still that person may, I mean, that company may need a press release, or they may need a television commercial, or they may need a radio ad, or they may need a bus shelter, or they may need a bus back, or they may need a podcast. It all depends on what vehicle that you, and what best will penetrate the market for them. And that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see how successful our campaigns were. That made me feel good, because that the client was happy, we were happy, check cleared, everybody was happy.
Well, I'm glad that that you're still able to to make a difference and still and still be able to continue on with your your journey. And so, out of curiosity, do many people ask you about like your experience, or do you have an opportunity to tell anybody about all of the great stuff that you have done over the years? Because I mean, I have personally like absolutely loved hearing about your story. I mean, from so many different perspectives. So I'm just curious.
Um, Not a lot. This past Friday, I accompanied our agency director to the ABC affiliate, television affiliate here in DC, to do an interview. And while we were sitting in the lobby waiting for the producer to come and take us back to the set, um, she asked me about, um, what I had. Did you tell me you used to work here? And I said, yeah, I did. I worked here years and years ago. She said, well, how does it feel being here? And not actually working. I said, it feels great. I don't have to do anything. I just I can just sit here and be a guest. And she said, I never knew, that you spent time here. And I told her that when she first arrived, but she was new. She didn't, she couldn't process all of these different people that she was inheriting, to know what they did. But she said, that's really great. And she said, what shows did you do? And I said, well, we won an Emmy for doing this show, and we did this show. And she said, oh my gosh, you won an Emmy? And I said, yeah. She said, why don't you ever tell anybody that? I said, what am I going to tell them? You just walk around and say, oh, hey, oh, by the way, did you know I won an Emmy? No. And plus it was 40 years ago. So I said, no, I don't talk about these things. And somebody asked me, like yourself, I would tell them, but it's not something that I'm going to broadcast to the world. And most people who know me have known me all my life. So they already know all this stuff.
Well, nevertheless, I mean, that's just really great that you were able to have that experience just last week. And you've mentioned a few times that throughout the different jobs that you've had, that you've stayed like in touch and in communication with so many of the different people you've met and interacted with. And so, how has that been for you being able to, I mean, to still keep in contact with these people that have held meaning like throughout your life?
It's great. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better. Like in March, I went to Vegas on a girls' trip for the weekend, and it's eight of us, and all of us worked at Channel 7, the ABC affiliate, at the same time. And we all became friends there, and we stayed friends. And so went to Vegas to one of our girlfriends moved out there, and we went to spend the weekend with her and celebrating being together for 30 years. So that was
Well,
fun.
was it an enjoyable trip?
Oh yeah, that was great. We had a great time. Who can go to Vegas and not have a great time?
That is so true.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, this is just so so great to hear about like I said, truly everything that you've been doing, and and to the best of your knowledge, you plan on continuing with your current job like over the next few months and years to come.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I enjoy what I do, and it's we this is our second agency director, so it's interesting getting to know how each person wants to run the agency and how you can best support that person when they take the helm. So yeah, I still enjoy my job.
Well, I'm just so glad to hear that. And yeah, I mean, like I said, this has just been so enjoyable. And so for anyone who is like watching or listening, and and it's really like inspired by something that you said, or through your journey, or anything else, what would you have to say for for someone who is tuning in and watching, listening now?
Well, if they are in the field of communications, and it all depends. When I was coming along in television, there were only three stations: ABC, NBC, and CBS. That was it. But now the opportunities are so massive, and you can create your own opportunity. So especially with social media, which we clearly didn't have back then. So I would say learn as much as you can. Try to get mentors so that people can help you along the way, maybe prevent you from making the same mistake they did. But it's always better to know, to understand where people have been so that you don't have to repeat the same mistakes. So I would say try to get mentors if you can, and just try to keep learning. Don't ever stop learning, and work hard. When people see you are working hard and trying to make something, they will help you.
I absolutely love that sentiment. And like I said, this has just been such an honor being able to, like I said, to speak with you and to, really get to know you. And so I once again want to say my, like just such a big thank you for willing to speak with me, and for being here. It's just been such an honor.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, and so while we're speaking, as we are closing out, is there anything else that you wanted to say while we're still here speaking, or any questions for me?
Well, tell me what you want to do with your career.
Yeah, so for me, I've always told people like I'm very open ended, and that like for me when I have a vision or a passion, I like to go after it. But I've noticed that for me, things just I think everything sort of works out in the way that it should, and that opportunities just sometimes just arise when when I think they should. And so my overall vision has shifted over the years, and where overall when someone asks me like what do I want to do, where I want to see, it's like I love so many different things. Like I love television, I love of course podcasting, as I do now. I love the realm of education. I like my childhood dream was to be a teacher, and so ultimately my major answer to the question is I'm on a mission to bring people together in whichever way or path that you know that it comes to be. I'm just
Mhm.
willing to take it and give it a chance.
Wonderful. Well, I wish you all the luck.
Thank you so much. I so greatly appreciate that.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, for those of you watching or listening, thank you all so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Tansson Talk Show. And I hope that you all continue tuning in every week as we continue on our mission to bring people together. But until next time, thank you so much, and I'll see you all later.